so I started to travel the country as a comedian.
It's quite a diverse job scope.
Yeah. But
Dr. Phil, you've mentioned that your whole education path was a long part of your life. 14 years, was it?
13 years to get to my undergrad.
13 years. See, that's the complete opposite with me, because I'm about to finish my second year already. And I've just started my university like last year itself.
Do you think it's still wise to invest in a degree? And why not?
We're definitely seeing it in our generation right now. Education is wherever we go, whatever we do.
Do I think more of it is going to be done in a hybrid? Yes. Will all of it be online? I don't think so.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk, Why Not? A podcast coming to you all the way from Help University, from our Subang Bestari campus. My name is Edmond, Dr. Edmond O, and I lead the Research Management Center here at Help University, and I'm very pleased to host today's episode. And today we're joined by Dr. Phil Zerillo, also known to his students as Dr. Z.
Yeah, that's what it says right here on my shirt.
Yep. A seasoned academic, a strategist, and a board member serving 4 universities across diverse regions. And we also have with us today a representative of Gen Z, Shane Eugene Mcaleavey, who's just finished his second year here at the LLB program at our Department of Law at Help University, and is on his way to begin his final year in the UK pretty soon. With Phil's unique vantage point bridging academia, governance, and regional dynamics, we'll explore a timely and often polarizing question together with Shane's perspectives. Is investing in a degree still wise in today's world? It's a kind of a polarizing sometimes and maybe provocative questions that's perhaps a very common topic nowadays in a lot of kitchen tables. But maybe we'll start with Phil to kick us off. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself. You've had a fascinating journey from academia to strategy, and now sitting on the boards of 4 universities in different regions.
Yeah.
What drives your passion for higher education governance?
Yeah. So my life has been a little bit of it hasn't been a straight line. Okay, I'm a person who took 13 years to finish their undergraduate degree. Okay, so it was the sort of thing I stopped and I started. I was all self-funded, so I had to make my own money to go to school, and so I stopped. I started and eventually finished my degree in 13 years, and then I went on and got my PhD and finished that in 4 years. Okay, so my educational baking time was a little bit longer than most people's. Excuse me. Along the way, I started to see some things. I was a bit of a different student, and I started to see the opportunities that education opened up for me. Okay, I grew up in a family where education was not prioritized. My brothers and sisters didn't go on to do undergraduate degrees, much less graduate degrees. And but I got to school and I found a passion. I found I enjoyed what they were teaching. I enjoyed pressing myself to learn new topics. I enjoyed the intellectual camaraderie and the intellectual rivalry that came along with being in a classroom. So for me, I always just enjoyed the learning and the learning experience. I finished university, my undergraduate degree, and I had been working all through the undergraduate degree. And it was the sort of thing that I'd had a number of careers, if you will. I had finished most of my undergraduate degree, and then I had an accident, and so I couldn't finish. And I went on to the work world, and I started to work, and I worked in a finance job. So I worked at the finance job every day, and I worked there for about 7 years. And along the way, I started to do different things. I'm just one of those people that's naturally curious. So I started a radio show, okay? And I went to the radio channel, and I said, you guys need a business show. you don't have any business content on your channel. So they said, yeah, that actually is a pretty good idea, but we don't know how to do it. I said, I'll show you how to do it. Right? I was all of 23 years old. And so I told them I'd show them how to do it. Well, the next day I had a radio show. And I started doing this radio show, and then about 4 years into the radio show, they had a competition for the funniest person in radio. So I entered the competition, and I won the competition, and I became a stand-up comedian. So now I was working at finance all day long, and then I would do my radio show, and usually on the weekends or a couple nights a week, I was playing comedy clubs, right? And then I started to catch on as a comedian, and so I started to travel the country as a comedian.
It's quite a diverse job scope.
Yeah, yeah. But, the lifestyle and the career was not right for me, okay? It wasn't. I liked it. I enjoyed the high of being on stage, but it wasn't something I see myself getting old in. So I decided to go back to school. I said, where can I tell jokes that I can still tell those jokes and nobody can leave? Professor, right? So that's what I did. I became a professor, right? And I've enjoyed that, right? And so, I know I've taken a little bit of time on this answer, but just in the effort of completeness, there's been a lot of offers for me to leave academia and go into industry, right? I was the chairman of the board of a couple of public companies. I've consulted with over 300 firms, but I've never left academia. And the reason is because I believe in academia. I've watched how it changed my life, and I've watched how it changed the life of others. And I've had several doctoral students that, I watched them find their way into academia after taking a PhD at a late stage. And I always look at them and I say, so you were the one in the family that liked school, huh? They said, yeah. How do you know that? I said, because. I said, you're a sucker for this. It changed your life, and now you want to change everybody else's life. So, the idea of why do I keep going in academia, and why do I keep writing and researching even at this stage? It's for the next generation.
Thank you. And maybe this brings us to the next generation.
Yeah.
Very nicely. And Shane.
So it's all for you, Shane.
All right.
You are in the middle of your undergraduate degree right now.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you're enjoying it or otherwise, and where you see yourself going with what you're learning with all this while in your first degree.
All right. Well, it's quite funny because earlier, Dr. Phil, you've mentioned that your whole education path was a long part of your life. 14 years, was it?
13 years to get my undergrad.
13 years. See, that's the complete opposite with me because I'm about to finish my second year already. And I've just started my university last year itself. So it flies a lot. It definitely flies university life. But with that short period of time, which I've had the opportunity to be here as a Help University student in my 2 years of university, despite that low time period that I got, despite that, a lot of things I've learned, a lot of people I've met, and it's a very important transitional stage in my life right now. I've got 1 more year left. I'll fly to the UK and handle that year, and there's a lot of things to deal with as well. But it's definitely a part of life that you cherish. I remembered when I was doing my internship before I got into university, one of the partners over there said, well, listen, you're not in uni yet, but enjoy uni because this is the best time of your life. So, and it is definitely a monumental part of my life as well. You live in a whole new environment, you're moving out, you've got your own place to stay, and you're dealing with lecturers, not teachers now. Dynamics are different. Kind of work you do is different. The extracurriculars are different as well. You travel from place A to place B by yourself as well, and it's interesting, degree life.
It looks like it's been rewarding for you so far, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But having said that, we live in an age of, I mean, you may agree with me or not, but I think we live in an age of growing skepticism towards traditional education, right? So from your perspective, Phil, do you think it's still wise to invest in a degree, and why not?
Yeah. So, I've administered in universities for a good 25 years now. And I've been a college dean in the United States and Singapore and Thailand and India. And what I would say is that, look, a lot of people will pronounce the end of education. I think education is something that is just getting started, but it's finding new forms and new formats. Even the way that I teach today couldn't even been conceived of when I began my teaching career. Once upon a time, we didn't even have PowerPoint, right? Imagine that you didn't have
Transparencies.
PowerPoint. Yeah, we were using transparencies in those days, if you could find them, right? And, they used to try to limit you because those were expensive. And so you had to be concise, and you learned how to teach in a different way. Now we're doing things on green screens, and we're doing things on all kinds of different formats and in all different types of media. So I think education is evolving first. Is it still worth it to get a degree? Oh, absolutely. Right, so many of the things that you just mentioned, right, are what I would call the non-degree or the non-curriculum learnings that you pick up. It's going to school with other people that are bright people, that are young people, that are your cohort. These are people that you'll stay in touch with for the rest of your life. And even if you don't stay in touch with them, even if you move to the other side of the world and none of them are there and you make new friends, the fact that you had to make those friends for a 2-year period, it gives you a skill that you didn't realize that you needed. You learn how to make friends outside of your parents' home, outside of the school that you were forced to go to every day, right? And so these are the kind of things that are part of the way in which your character is developed. I've always said that a person's character is formulated between the ages of about 17 and 25. And that is when you really become the person that you're going to be, in large part. You learn how to do things outside your parents' home, how to take in different information. You learn how to argue with people. You learn how to accept people's opinions. You learn how you feel about everything from, your sexuality, to your politics, to your religions, right? Because these are the discussions we have, and we're meeting diverse people when we leave. So education and that personal side or personal component of education is something that really does prepare you for the next stage in your life. So a lot of people are, they'll pronounce the end of education because all they're doing is looking at the curriculum and say, well, this curriculum could be duplicated here, and maybe this would be a little less expensive than that, and this company requires less of this and more of that. It's the social side of it, and it's been that way forever, right? That there's a big multiplier effect to going to school with other people. When you sit in a classroom, and I'm sorry for the long answer. My answers are always long. But I'm sorry for the long answer. But when you sit in a room and you listen to how other people got their answers or how they answer questions, you all of a sudden realize that people don't think the same way. And it's that kind of open discussion in the classroom where people give answers and the answers are right or wrong. And you have to inspect, why didn't I know that answer? How did I miss that answer? Why did they know it? Right? That you all of a sudden begin to learn different logics, different ways of thinking. This is the incredible thing about being around a cohort that's improving itself every day. So education is one of those things that if you come in with the mindset that I will take everything I can get from education, it's incredible where it'll take you.
Any thoughts on that, Shane?
I'd like to add on a lot of the
Sure.
points he's mentioned because you've raised a lot of stuff which actually really resonated with me as well. So personally for me, I'm a law student, and he was mentioning about collaboration and critical answers and the fact that one person might get into this answer and another person might get to another answer. That couldn't be the truth of law, because my degree, or this field of education itself, there's no right and wrong answer.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things which you would deem objectively appropriate or subjectively appropriate. And there will be times where your answer will lean towards one thing or it might lean towards other things. But no one has the same thought process on that. General rule is you always reach the same output. You always ask yourself, what would a reasonable person do? This or that. Sounds straightforward, you know, it's a 1 + 1 = 2 kind of answer, but really it's not. Because you sit here and you think, and it goes even further from the textbook as well. You learn about all these things, but your conclusion is really down to how you argue it. Like, I've had a lot of friends that in our curriculum, they encourage you a lot to give in answers and tutorials and stuff. And they always like to see how you reach towards an answer. And I'll have a friend who, even though I've said that, oh no, it should be this way, they'll be like, no, it shouldn't, it'd be this way. And we'd spend like half an hour arguing about it. Because they've got their point of view, I've got my point of view. At one point, we're not listening to each other, but then eventually we'll be like, okay, you know what, you're starting to make sense. So it's exactly what Dr. Phil Zerillo said. You know, education and uni life is a place where you get a bunch of people and you give them the opportunity to learn something and to enhance what they're learning through open collaboration. I mean, of course you can do it without a degree because, I mean, sky's the limit with what you can do. But that opportunity for you to learn and also enhance it with another group of people that are just like you, in your same situation yourself, it's important, and it's something, you know, it's like something worth to cherish in that moment. And he was mentioning stuff about like, oh, we're moving away from the age of traditional education. That couldn't be further from the truth. You know, education doesn't necessarily mean, oh, education means whatever I learn in university. We're definitely seeing it in our generation right now. Education is wherever we go, whatever we do. And with the new mediums that we're given, you are constantly learning something every day. For example, me, for my generation, we like to go on YouTube and stuff. And you know, YouTube is a place where you can find, you know, nice videos to have maybe some lighthearted videos or some content to just pass the time. There's a lot of that. But there's also a lot of videos where, and I'm very guilty to this because I'll always watch these videos even though they're like 45 minutes or like 50 minutes. But they're video essays, and they always talk about something very critical, and they always give their feedback, and it could be anything. World issues, literature, interpretations, all of that. So we are living in a world where education has gone beyond the university, where it's gone to every aspect of our lives. So when it gets back to that thing that because the world is changing, should we leave the universities this way? Do we not need a degree? Because why do I need to study for something in an institution where I can just watch all these things and research it by myself? And it's a pretty valid question, but if I were to put my own feedback into it, this is how I would view it. Everything that we're learning now, all the sources of mediums that we have now, I always see it as a supplement to what we have. It's not a replacement of what we have, but something that enriches it further. Maybe I'll learn something in uni and maybe I'll go back and I'll watch a video on that and it'll enhance my knowledge on it. So instead of, let's say if I did a literature degree, instead of not doing a literature course at all, I just read books and see people's interpretations of it, I can still do a literature degree myself. But then whatever I learn over there, because there are experts and professionals in that field teaching me something, I'll go back and learn some more things myself. So I've got something to supplement and complement my studies as well. And
Okay.
wouldn't it be nice to pair two good things together to make a better thing?
Let me
ahead.
just follow up on that just very quickly. One of the things I've found is, look, I have a lot of senior PhD students, people who are taking their PhD in their 40s and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I noticed that none of them were coming to me for help with their statistics. Now, it used to be that I taught people how to write questions and I taught them how to do the statistical analysis on the validity of those questions and what have you. And I started to ask my students, I said, how did you learn how to do this data technique? And they said, well, we kind of got it in class, but I really learned it on YouTube. So they suggested it in class, and then I go to YouTube, and there's a tutorial on how to do it. So it has actually, what I would say is, it's supercharged classes. It's amplified them. You can give people assignments and say, look, go on out and supplement what I'm telling you, but you're going to be held responsible for being competent in this area. But you give them the building blocks and let them go in and fill it out with other information from other places and what have you. So I think, the basics are still always going to be there, and there's still a need for that, right, of how to direct learning and what have you. But, some of these other areas are going to add something to it.
So I think that what I see coming out from both your responses is that this whole democratization of knowledge through the availability of content in non-traditional formats, which available on YouTube and TikTok and whatnot, rather than being an alternative to or a competitor to traditional education, it kind of works best when it complements the traditional degree, right? It makes sense. It definitely to me, and everything you say sounds very convincing. But I'm going to try to play a little bit of the devil's advocate here. What about those who say that that the university environment, yes, granted that it allows for a diversity of viewpoints and perspectives, it nevertheless is somewhat of an echo chamber. As well as you're kind of insulated from the real world, from the University of Hard Knocks, so to speak, right? And maybe Phil, with your experience having gone through
Go ahead.
the real world before finally completing your undergraduate degree, maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, I think that more and more and more, right, in applied fields like mine, okay, I'm a professor in business and my PhDs are in marketing. So, in my area, it is very much an applied field. What we need to do and what we struggle to do and what we all try to do is to reduce the membrane between the business community and academia. Because what we do need to do is we need to keep up with the current activities and processes and problems that businesses are facing. One of the things that we do here now at Help University, and something that I've been spearheading at the university, is to write business cases about the problems that companies are facing, the challenge that sat in front of them, and how they went about solving that problem. Okay, that sort of problem-based learning is, extremely important for preparing students to be able to, go out and hit the ground running, solving problems for the companies that they work for, or in the industries that they're in, or for the agencies that they work for. So even in areas like political science, even in areas like psychology, what we're doing is teaching people to solve problems, to identify the problems, identify solutions, and advocate prescriptions or prescriptive activities that can help you to solve these. So I think, the idea that can you just be an echo chamber and not interact with your domain or your discipline, I don't think you can do that anymore. And I don't think that students will come to a university that does that. Once upon a time, I went to school a little before you. I know that we're both Gen Z, but I was on the front end of Gen Z.
Gen Z is a very big period, by the way.
But once upon a time, when I was going to school, the level of instruction was much, much lower, and the level of knowledge about industry was much lower than it is today.
Mm-hmm.
Our faculty are much more well-rounded and much more advanced in their teaching techniques than they were years ago.
Right. Well, with that, perhaps it might be time for a break. We'll take a short break now, and we'll be back after this to look at how perhaps there might be differences in what we've been talking about across the region. Right? Hello and welcome back. As a reminder, we have with us here Dr. Phil Zerillo and Shane Mcaleavey. And we've been talking about whether it is still wise to invest in a university degree in today's world. We've got a lot of very fascinating perspectives from you so far, but moving beyond perhaps Malaysia, that I guess what we've been thinking about, I'm looking at you especially, Phil, with your experience working in different regions, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about where you've worked and in what contexts. Sure. How do you see this question playing out perhaps differently across the 4 regions you've worked in? And are some, for example, more degree focused, while others perhaps lean more towards skill-based credentials?
Yeah, so just a little bit about my background. So, when I went to university at Northwestern University over in the United States, and that's where I did my PhD. And then I went back to my alma mater. My alma mater was the University of Texas for my undergraduate degree. And I was lucky enough to get a job offer there. And so I went back to my alma mater. And, then I moved. I went to Emory University for a little while. I went back to Northwestern and was on the faculty there. And then I moved out here to Asia. I'd been doing more and more work in Asia, and I had an unhappy teenage son. And so I said, come on, let's go reboot you for a year over in Asia. So I came to Asia for a year, and I've been here for 16. So what did I do? Well, I was at Singapore Management University over in Singapore, and I spent 4.5 years as the dean of the graduate school there at Singapore Management. Then I went over and became a dean in India, at the India School of Business, and now I'm at now I sit on the board of places like here at Help University and Jose Rizal University in the Philippines and Walks-In University over in India. And so this is what I do, is I advise universities on how to put together curriculum, how to develop internal processes, how to enhance their learning, the pedagogy, areas like that I've been working with for the last 25 or 30 years. Okay, so that's kind of who I am and how I kind of, got around this region. Now, you asked me the question about, what do I see happening out here in Asia, or what do I see happening in other parts of the world? That's a really difficult question to answer, okay, in a singular direction. A lot depends on where you are as to what's going to be happening. Okay, so let me give you an example. I was chosen to be the dean of a university out in Korea, and I looked at the Korean education system before I decided whether or not I wanted to take that job. And Korea is a place where the demographic trends are just horrible going towards, for the future of students, right? So if you think about Korea, right, the average Korean female is having about 0.7 children, a little less than that. Now, if you start thinking about that and you say, okay, I have 50 boys, 50 girls, so 100 people, we're going to produce 35 children, right? 0.7 per female is 35 children. Now, all of a sudden, we go one more generation, right? So you have now 18 women, let's say, 18 men, and if you have a 0.7 fertility rate, you're going to be down around 10 or 11 children. right? Now, this is with no mortalities and things like this. Already in 2 generations, 90% decline in the number of students coming into the education system. This is a huge demographic issue for East Asia. Okay, 9 of the 11 lowest birth rates in the world sit out here in East Asia. So places like Singapore, places like Taiwan, Korea, Japan, these places are just, their education systems are going to really struggle if they think they're going to be able to do it with domestic students or what have you. On the other hand, there's places like the Philippines, places like Malaysia, places where they have young populations. And the one thing that young populations do that older populations don't do is they reproduce, right? And so younger populations are still reproducing, and if they still are north of that 2.1 births per female, these populations are going to continue to grow. So if I were to do the example that I did with the Korean females, okay, where in 2 generations, you've lost 88% of the market. In 3 generations, you've lost 95.5% of your market size going in 3 generations. 3 generations, if an average female life cycle is 18 years of their primary conception period, now all of a sudden, you're talking about populations that are going to be 95% smaller than they used to be in terms of the inflow to the economy, to the school system, to the work world, to whatever it is. So on the other hand, you have places like Sierra Leone, or you have places like Benin, or places like Burkina Faso, where the median age in the country is 19 years of age. The median age of Japan is 53 and a half. So the birth rates, and then you look at Benin, and the average birth rate's about 7 per female. Now, if you do 7 times 50, and then 7 times 350, or 175 if we gender include it, now you're talking about 1,400 births versus 10, right? It's just an incredible difference in the world. Now, what's going to happen? Education is going to be different in those environments, right? So if you ask me the question about, kind of the future, if I'm living in Japan, if I'm living in Korea, if I'm living in Singapore, the future is about automation because they don't have people, okay? And you better be thinking about how to automate and the things that you can do, even legally, to be able to, accommodate overseas workers coming to your country and working, or citizenship, or whether it's going to be how to employ an external workforce that's going to be automating things from abroad. But the solutions are going to be a great deal different. And that's what we're seeing, right? Is that the whole world is changing at a amazing clip. Right? So I know that's a long, long answer, and I've probably, thrown in a lot of different topics there. But what I would tell you is what I see around the world is different ministries of education. And I've had half a dozen students that are the ministers of education in different countries who have been my ex-students, and they're wrestling with very, very different problems. When I went to Korea, I talked to Korea and I said, well, look, we could recruit more students and this would change our balance sheets and this would, and the president of the university looked at me and said, no, you don't understand. Here in Korea, we're going to close 10% of our universities in the next 2 years.
Sure.
We cannot take in more students because there are not enough kids. And if we go out and we start taking a bigger market share, other universities are going to have to close. And Korea is not ready to close these universities yet. So the whole educational recruitment process, the class sizing, the idea of the market competitiveness is all a great deal different.
So I take it that you didn't end up accepting that job in Korea?
No, I didn't. I didn't do that. I went to India instead.
Right. So moving to that, that's the most populous country in the world. How are things different there?
India, we never had a shortage of students. Okay, and India is still a young country, unlike China, which is getting old very quickly and
Right.
facing a lot of demographic issues. It's still a large number
Sure.
in China, but
And
that large
agriculture.
number is not as large as it used to be. And obviously, with a 48-year one-birth policy, and post the one-birth policy, there's no birth rates in the country still, and they're having some other complications that seem to be medically related.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at a place like India versus a place like China going forward. India's population is going to dwarf China's in the next 20 years. It's already more populous, but the difference is going to be startling here soon. Now, look, are the Indians changing? Sure, right? India has urbanized, and when people move into urban environments, they have fewer children. And so India's population growth is moderating. It's not as fast as it was, but India has a tremendous number of students and a tremendous amount of talent. Now, the one thing about the Indian marketplace was, for so many years, the Indian students wanted out of India. Okay, that was what they really wanted. So you had to be the best. You had to go to school, get the highest scores, because that was your ticket to get out of India and to be able to go get a job over in London, or to be able to go get a job in the United States or Australia or wherever. And so India's economic system and just sheer birth rates produced a lot of excellence. Okay. And it was built in by just hard work and what have you, once upon a time. Now, what are we starting to see, right, is that, India's started to build its own colleges and starting to get universities of repute in the country. Also, the visa status around the world is not quite as secure as it used to be. It used to be that if you could get your child to the United States or Australia or England, they'd get a visa when they got done and they'd start working in that country. So student mobility was very high once upon a time. What we're seeing now is students wanting to stay home because it's unsure whether or not they'll be able to get those jobs and be able to earn in foreign dollars in the future.
Sure.
So one of the things I'm starting to see is, while everybody would like to go abroad, everybody would like to study abroad, like yourself, okay, is that the family it's a much more judicious decision than it used to be.
Sure, sure.
Okay.
It's fascinating.
Oh.
Wow. Look, given all that, what you've told us about the demographic differences and the socioeconomic context underlying those differences, do you think the traditional campus-based model is still sustainable for all these different demographics, or will hybrid and lifelong learning become the default for some?
So let me answer that in 3 steps.
Sure.
Okay, so the idea that we'll have no classroom experience, I don't think that ever happens, right? I know that, some of the most creative people I've seen in the higher education space that are going out and attracting enormous investment from private equity and what have you are advocating and claiming that that'll be the case. And I can see very good arguments for it happening in large part. But does cohort-based, on-campus social experience ever go away? No, I don't think so. And one of the things I saw is, in some of the first online programs that I saw, they tried to do them 100% online, and they failed. They didn't work very well. And I would say that the instructional technology that they were using in the late 90s isn't much different than what a lot of universities are trying to do today. Okay? Is it succeeding? No, but it helped people get through COVID.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Now, what I started to see back around 2010, and some of the first places to do this were places like Instituto Impreso over in Spain, is they started to run the first hybrid programs, right? Hybrid was where they went to school online, but they also met up. And when I was over there and I was talking to them and I said, how is this working for you? They said, the satisfaction among students is super high. I said, really? They said, yeah, they like it much more than in class. Then I sat with students and I said, why do you like this more than just being in a classroom? They said, well, I have better flexibility. I'm not always sure I can be here, but this allows me to handle some of my classes, not in the classroom, but to be able to handle them from someplace else. And you know, when we get together, we get along great. So when the cohort gets together, and the cohort gets together for 20 or 30% of the class meeting time, they love each other. And you know, I would go to these seminars and people are hugging each other and kissing each other. Now that's the Spanish, right, in them. But you know, I was just amazed at how close these people got. And then I enjoyed that university, and I wasn't working for them, but I invited them to come on a travel trip with our students from Singapore. And I got to observe them for a week traveling together. And it was incredible what a cohort they were able to put together. And when I asked the people on that trip, I said, well, you know what, you guys seem very, very close. I said, is that something you're happy about? And is that something you tried to do? They said, this is the best part of our experience. They said, we learned a lot in the classroom. It's a good school. We've got great teachers, but it's what we learned from each other. And what we did is we learned it, and we learned it while we weren't, while we were in strange places with each other. So what they would do is they would come in, they would, have the seminar, maybe the opening was here in Kuala Lumpur, but they said, let's finish, and let's not finish on the campus, let's finish in a hotel in someplace like Manila or Bangkok. And everybody went to Manila or Bangkok, but they were away from their homes, they struggled with the language, they kicked down the cobblestones with each other, and they had to make it work. And you just could not believe how incredibly intense and bonded these people were.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's one of those things that prove it to me, right? And that was it. It was the proof.
Sure.
So people always talked about these models, and I got to see proof of it. And so to answer your question, I don't think the university is going to go away. Okay. Do I think more of it is going to be done in a hybrid? Yes. Will all of it be online? I don't think so. There'll be a market for that. Okay.
Yeah.
But I think that people still want those social experiences and that time to bond and build and, have a shared memory of what their education was about. I'm sure that part of the joy of the first 2 years that you spent together is you're getting ready to pack your bags and go to another country.
We're figuring out which person comes with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a transfer program. It's like, oh, you're going to that university? You're going to this university?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but maybe I could ask Shane now, because I think you, not just this generation, but I think your age range, plus minus 2 or 3 years, had that experience of studying during COVID, right? And we could have a whole podcast on that itself. I mean, all that. But how has that experience been for you? And did you see the switch to online learning? More of a something you struggled with, or came away, took something positive out of it, and has that been the case coming out of COVID? What was it like in your daily classes?
I think when it was COVID time, it wasn't much of a choice.
Exactly.
It was rather a necessity thing. So we weren't coming up with those questions yet. We weren't like, hey, should we do a physical thing or should we do an online class? Because really we had no choice over there. It's like, oh, we want to keep learning, so let's do it online. So that was the way. There was no wiggle area with that. It was either you had COVID, or the least likely option is just to not do classes, but at that point, no education. So COVID point is, I think it's hard to draw the experience in doing online classes during COVID compared to doing online classes or hybrid classes now,
Right.
because at that point of time, it was just a mere necessity thing. We couldn't think more of it. It's like, oh, well, we have no other choice. We just have to do this. So it came with its own pros and cons. The pros was, well, at least I can still study or something. At least my lecturer can still get to me, and we're all in our own bedrooms, with our own webcams and stuff, just staring at the camera over there and learning something. But on the other hand, it's not a natural environment. It's and I think a lot of people have different views on that, which I'll get into a bit later on when we're comparing hybrid, online, or physical classes now. But I always have to stress how important it is to have that natural feeling into it. It's a very subtle thing, and for something where you're just sitting there and listening to someone lecture or teach you something, where at that point, like usually if it's a lecture, they don't really have that much interaction. You wouldn't think, oh, well, I need something to feel natural to make it something. But it's very important because I feel like no matter how much you try to force it in an online class, it will never come across the same as a physical class, which gets into physical classes now, hybrid classes now. So for me, my journey through it was interesting because I went through physical classes and then COVID hit with full-on online, and then you finished your high school and you went to pre-U, and this was a stage where COVID was slowly dying out, but they did hybrid classes.
Right.
So you would go to class and then, let's say like Monday, Tuesday, you would have online classes. Then Thursday, Friday, you would have physical classes, something like that. So it was a weird kind of phase. Even in that, it felt easier for me, myself, to focus on those physical classes more. Because with an online class, it's like if I'm in a physical class, for example, and someone's there with me, someone's communicating something to me, it's so easy for me to take in something and then give it back. Whereas with an online class, they will speak into their mic and then it'll go through over there, and everyone has to keep their mics off. Otherwise, you're going to hear someone's cat or someone's fan or some static noise or something that's just going to turn the whole mood off. And then when you do want to answer the question, you either, I mean, in MS Teams and stuff, they have the option where you can put the thumbs up and stuff. So it's either you do that or you become very daring and you turn off your mic and you say, and you yourself speak up and say, yeah, we can hear you and stuff. In a physical class, you don't need to do that. It's like, you can tell if we're being engaged with each other because that's just how it naturally is. It's so much easier for me to just say that I'm following my lecturer in a physical class because I can just do it by mere gesture. And it's not just me, it's everyone else. Whereas in an online class, you've probably got like, let's say if it's an online class of 30 students, you're gonna be that one student that unmutes your mic and says something. And really, it's actually quite scary to do that. It's psychological. And it's funny how psychological it is because, you know, for something that feels like, oh, we can just bring classes to you and you get to sit in your house and just study and just pay attention to that, and it's so convenient for you. It's more convenient for me to actually engage with a class when I'm there in person compared to when I'm forced within the confines of a computer and I have to mute myself and unmute myself and make that big decision to do something. Furthermore, I think I've sidetracked quite a lot, but
no, I think that's you.
I think the one thing about being in a physical place is that there are less distractions. Sure, convenience is there where you can get the class to you, you can attend it digitally, but I'd say for myself, and maybe I speak for other students too, but I do feel that we're very different. My attention span for an online class is considerably less than that of a physical class. I just can't help it. Because in an online class, I'm really sitting there just to get the points down and then go through with it.
Sure.
And if it's a lot of talking and all that stuff, and if it's not engaging, then my mind will just fly somewhere else.
Yeah.
And not to mention, you've got your comfort of your home, which is your worst enemy in that situation. Your bed, your AC. Maybe I didn't even take a shower at that time. You know how lazy you can be when it's an online class. Physical class, I've taken a shower, I'm well dressed, I'm well fine, I feel fresh.
Sure.
Online class, I wake up like 2 minutes before the class and my hair's a mess. I'm still in my PJs and I feel, you feel off.
Sure.
So you're dealing with all those extraneous factors that come in from being at the comfort of your home at all places.
Sure. And maybe I could add this from the, I mean, you've given us the perspective of a student, and maybe from a teacher's perspective. I taught online during COVID, and when we came out of online classes back to the classroom, I remember what a relief it was to see my students' eyes and how much that mattered, right? I'm sure you can identify with that. Just staring at the screens and everyone's got their cameras off, it's so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a stand-up comedian, I used to open up for a lot of musical acts. And, so I lived in a big city. I lived in Houston, Texas. And so I got to know some of the big musical acts that were based down in Houston, people like ZZ Top and people like that. And so, it was one of those things that I remember I got invited to a party after Bruce Springsteen performed in Houston. And I got a chance to talk with him afterward. And I remember he said something to me that kind of changed the way I think about teaching, okay? Is what he said to me is he said, look, he said, I don't have a warm-up act like you come out there, and I don't have a warm-up band. And the reason I play a 4-hour set is because this is a big day for these people. In my mind, the day that I'm going to teach for them is a very big day in their life. They saved their money to come to this concert, and I'm going to make it the best damn concert you can make. Now, I thought, wow, what a great thing he's doing. He understands the magic of the moment. And, I do this with my teaching, right? Is before I go into the classroom, I start getting myself revved up. So 30 minutes before I'm going in the classroom, I'm singing, I'm shouting, I'm doing all these kind of things. And I walk into my classroom and I say, welcome to day number 11 of the most exciting topic and this is the way I teach. Because to me, was my calling. This is what I wanted to do. So when I walk into the classroom, I wanted to make sure it was a great event for people. Could I do that online? I never was able to really feel like I could.
You're working with confines when you're online.
Yeah. And, to be able to engage those people, and look, your audience gets tired at times. No matter how good you are at lecturing or questioning, you notice that your class is getting tired. Somebody in the class, a couple of people have droned on in their answers, and you can see classmates turning off, either because there's a personal issue or because they didn't like what was being talked about. Being able to walk over to those people, stand in front of them, put your hand on their desk as you're listening, you watch their heart rate start to rise back up. They plug back in. These are the kind of things that, that on-campus experience is magical, right? So come get some.
Sure.
But I feel like I still need to add this bit because I feel like we need to play devil's advocate a little bit more in this area. I've spoke from a perspective of a student, but as a student myself, I don't reflect exactly how every student would feel about this approach, because there have been times we've had online classes instead of traditional classes, and I do know people that do prefer the online or hybrid approach to it compared to a physical class. Reason being is because of what a point was mentioned earlier, convenience. Because you have to factor in a lot of things. People don't just live in the university itself. It takes traveling. People have to take the train, people have to drive, and they have to go all the way here and then go all the way back. Sometimes you have days where we had one day in the week where we only had 1 hour of class for that whole day, and it was from 1 to 2, and that was it. And a lot of my friends would wonder, well, what's the point of us going and driving all the way to the uni just to get there?
Yeah.
And then we're done with that 1 hour. It takes us longer to go there and back compared for us to stay over there and listen to what the lecturer has to say before going back. So it's convenience. And it's an effort to go into uni. So sometimes when it feels like you're putting in too much effort to go there and you don't have that much time to reap while you're there, then there's the issue of, well, maybe we need to branch off from the traditional experience a little bit. Maybe we can't just like strictly follow down that regiment where we believe that traditional is traditional and at the end of the day it's right. Because still there will come those times or those scenarios where you might feel, well, it would be oddly convenient if A, we just did this online, or B, if it's even online to begin with, why don't we just get a pre-recorded lecture that we can listen from time in, time out, and maybe that will be something that we will pay attention more ourselves within our own time.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank you.
I'd like to just, kind of hit on something you said, and just, one of the things that we have to do is, or we have to think about, is access. So, when I work in places like the Philippines, most of the population is not living in the two big cities of the Philippines, Cebu and Manila, right? So you've got just this enormous population out in the middle of nowhere. They're not connected. They're not going to come to the big cities. The average income in a place like the Philippines is about $3,700 a year. So if you think about putting your son or daughter off to college and having them go into Manila to live from the rural countryside, those people are probably earning at a rate of about $900 a year on average. There's just no way that they're going to have access to the education in the big cities. They can't make the migration there and take advantage of that situation. So I think access is going to be a real place where the online world is going to provide something to help level up some of these disadvantaged populations. I saw this all over India. I see this all over the Philippines. Another thing that I notice is, a lot of young people at the college age are struggling. Okay, they're struggling with their own development issues, right? Whatever those might be. And, sometimes they get bullied, sometimes they have social adaptation issues. I've seen a lot of very good, very smart kids go and earn their degrees in the online world, and they don't want to be in that classroom. They don't want that social experience. Do I think it's good for them to have the social experience? Yeah, sure, but there's some kids that it's just not going to work for them, right? Mm-hmm. So I think this is where, we have to recognize there is definitely a market for non brick and mortar, but there's also a lot of reasons why brick and mortar still works.
Sure. Maybe we could now come to a few quick takes. So
sure.
These quick take questions where maybe you.
I don't know if I know how to do that.
Bam, bam, bam.
Right. So maybe we'll start. Maybe this one's for Phil. What do you think might be one structural change you believe universities need to think about, need to make to stay relevant in the next decade?
Okay, I'm going to give you two, unfortunately, because I can't be that concise. Okay, so the first one is going to be that they have to think about an alternate schedule. So the idea that everything is going to take place between 9 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon, and that's when lecturers are going to be on campus, and any student we have as a traditional student who goes to school from 9 to 5, that's over with, right? I mean, there's a lot of, I gave a talk here at Help University about a decade ago. And in that, I was talking about how at that time, the traditional student in the United States had been around 12 to 18% of the students were traditional. Traditional being on-campus students going to school on campus, and were between the ages of 17 and 23. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, 15 years later, 45% of the students were non-traditional. meaning they were over 23 years of age and they weren't going to school full-time and on campus.
Where is this? Help?
This is the whole United States.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So you just saw this massive, massive change in how people were fitting college in. And I think at the graduate level, that's even more so. Most graduate programs are part-time programs. And so you have to think of your schedule and when you're going to deliver. And you can't say, hey, we don't work nights. Okay?
Okay.
The second thing that I see for the universities is going to be lifelong learning. Okay, I mean, look, the world is moving so fast. The skills you're going to need are changing. They're automating many of the core processes in our disciplines, which is going to cause career opportunities. It may foreclose some careers, but it will create other opportunities. And you're going to have to be able to train people. And I think this is where universities are going to have to wake up and say, hey, we're not done with them at 21 years of age, right? They're going to be a long tail here, and there's going to be a lot of people need to come back. So if there's two things, I would say long tail and alternate delivery format at alternate times.
Thank you. Okay, next question. What do you think is the most overhyped trend in higher education today? Maybe Shane?
Most overhyped trend in higher education. Hybrid classes, in my opinion.
It's overhyped.
I think it is.
Mhm.
Because
Why?
I don't think you can, okay, wait, I wouldn't say hybrid classes, I'd say online classes, in my personal opinion. Because in online classes, you're trying to bring the class to people anyway when they're in an environment where they're less likely to reciprocate any knowledge that's put in. So here's my feedback on it. Instead of doing online classes where people are forced to sit there and you're not going to have the level of attention that they would have in a physical class, why not just give pre-recorded videos instead?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the attention span and how much I'm going to take is going to be better, because it's either I'm at a physical space where I'm naturally going to be able to hear something and take in something much easier compared to sitting in a environment where my body and my brain really doesn't feel like it. And the alternative would be I could do it at my own pace, at my own time, and it would be a video that I would watch, just like any of the videos that I've mentioned before that, the educational stuff that I watch. And I would listen to that with my full utmost attention, and I would take in all the key points I would take if I was in a physical class.
So this is asynchronous learning as
Yes.
opposed to synchronous classes.
Rather than, like, for example, an online class that's not even recorded.
Sure.
I mean, like, you're not really paying attention, and the moment's gone, the moment's gone.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Phil?
So I'm going to agree with you as a first answer, right? And I think that this is kind of a bit overhyped. But I think there's some things that are coming, right? I mean, you can see that the Peloton kind of model is starting, right? Where what they're doing is finding out somebody who can really bring it on certain topics. And then what they're doing is saying, tune in for this person. Our best Peloton instructor is going to be teaching you how to do A, B, or C. And I can see that the media build out on courses is getting closer to movie studio quality, right? So, to be able to walk into a classroom and, it's beyond, in some ways, what we can do physically ourselves, right? I mean, between the lighting and the acoustics and the animation and all these kind of things, it might even surpass some of the things that we can do. So I think it's overhyped at the moment, but I think there's still that opportunity out there at the end of the day. So
Yeah. Maybe for the benefit of our viewers, you could just tell us what the Peloton model is.
the Peloton model is that what Peloton does is they say, okay, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we're going to have Sir Edmond as our cycling instructor or our Zoom instructor, and he's going to run you through your calisthenics. And on everybody's bicycle has him on their screen, and he's yelling and screaming and working you out from one location.
Sure.
The best instructors rise to the top in that model, and the content and the way that they deliver is actually quite good.
Okay, thank you. Second last question. What's one underrated advantage of earning a degree that we don't talk about enough, you think?
You mind if I answer this first? I think when everyone talks about a degree, because we've talked about this before we've started this podcast, one thing about the degree is getting that piece of the paper at the end that says that I've got this qualification, now I can bring this qualification with me in my job search, which is ultimately one of the things that we do strive towards for. I mean, like, what else are we doing the degree if not for that qualification in the end? But I think one underrated thing about the degree is not the things that you necessarily learn in that academically, but your journey and all the other things that you pick up and all the other skills you need to pick up in order to do that degree moving on. I think a very good example is, so my degree, it's not all 100% exam based, so it's not down to, you go down to an exam and then you remember all of the law and then you regurgitate everything, you give your own analytical spin in it, and you're done with the exam, you're out. No. There's a lot of collaboration we have to do. We have, each of our modules, we have a group project, which is a presentation, but it's a presentation where instead of you actively handling the work all by yourself, unlike in an exam when it's all down to you, you are in that situation and you're working with others. And that's a whole different skill set. Because it's teaching you not to be able to be strong academically. It's teaching you how to work with others. And that's such an underrated skill, because no matter where you go, like, I'm going to go to law or I'm not going to go to law, at the end of the day, we're all going to do the same thing, which is working with other people. And you have to navigate through that. You have to navigate who you're working with, how they're like. You have to navigate communication. You have to know how to delegate things. You got to be able to be like, oh, I'll do this, you'll do that. You have to be able to set appointments, set deadlines. And when I say deadlines, not right at the end before you're about to submit the thing, daily or weekly checkups to see how you do. And that's such an underrated skill, because it prepares you. And of course you can, because the whole question about this whole podcast is whether a degree is still useful in today's world. And all these skills, these living skills, these practical skills, learning how to work with others, of course you'll be able to learn it when you get into an actual job atmosphere itself, or like a part-time job atmosphere itself. But I think it's a very good introduction to this kind of life when you enter a degree, and they teach you and prepare you to be able to deal with these challenges and these tasks in hand when you're about to grow older and you're about to become a working adult. And it's very underrated, and I wish we'd talk more about this, but we don't. It's not always about the qualifications. The qualifications are still very important, but it's also how you develop into becoming a working adult in the future and how you cooperate with others.
Thank you. Well,
so let me say, I'm going to say something that's very similar, but maybe from a different direction. So, I was young. I grew up in a working class neighborhood, and they would always talk about, oh, look at this person. They went to school with this person, and now they do business together, and they do business with this other person who went to school with them but is married. Okay, and I always thought, oh, there's this insiders club, and that it's exclusive, and they don't let people into this club. Okay, and that was the way I viewed the world once upon a time. And I thought, geez, this is terrible, right? That these people aren't giving access to other people and things like that. And I still do believe that that is not a good practice. But when I all of a sudden began teaching at some of the top tier universities around the world, and I looked at the experience that these kids went through, right? So I was the dean of the MBA program at the University of Texas. And I just remember the hell that those kids went through in their first year of the MBA program. And there were incredible amounts of reading and projects due and things like this. And you would see kids, staying up 20 hours a day. And, and at the end of it, a couple of things happened. Is one, they survive and they learn what they're capable of, right? Because they never would have known they were capable of that much work if they hadn't pushed themselves. Look, my grade point average as an undergrad was stellar, right? I got into graduate school like Kellogg. Okay, but then all of a sudden I went to school with people in Kellogg and I was like, oh my God, there's a whole nother gear here that I haven't got or I haven't found yet, right? And I had to develop it. I never knew what I was capable of until I went to school with other people that pushed me. So I would say that, that's one of those things that going to school, you get that degree, okay, so it says MBA or PhD or whatever, but it was really the experience that you went through. And I know that if a University of Texas MBA sees another University of Texas MBA apply for a job, if that person's got, good grades, they made it through the system, they're going to look at him and they're going to say, well, let's take another look at this kid because I know what he's been through. He's been through hell and he did it. And look, that's one of the things that you're selecting people for. Work isn't always even. It's not always even fair, right? But being able to grit your way through it, struggle your way through, be able to do a tremendous amount of unreasonable work in a short period of time is sometimes what, makes us different.
Thank you, Phil. Now for our last question, and maybe you can start with you, Phil. What would be your best advice to a student unsure whether university is the right next step? In a nutshell.
What would I suggest to somebody who's unsure is, it's like eating an apple. If you don't have a plan of how to eat the apple, you're going to go up, you're going to take a bite of the apple, and you're going to choke, right? On the other hand, take a couple of bites. Okay, schedule yourself some micro bites and try it and get yourself started. So if you really don't know if college is right for you and what have you, see what you can do about getting a starter bite, okay, of some sort. Whether it's you take an online course to get started, you take a summer course. I have a friend of mine who he's from Korea. He runs a business in Korea for kids that get bullied out of the classroom. So Korea has a very, very strict educational system. It's known for a lot of bullying and things like that through the system. So, what he did is he said, okay, look, let's find an alternate way for these kids to go to school, and let's see if what we can do is provide them with some, because they're turning off from school, so let's look at whether or not they can go into college classes and perform in the college classes. So what he does is he does online university classes while they're in high school, showing them that they're capable of learning the material and the content that is online. These students never go back to the private high schools. They instead engage with him. They work on their high school curriculum, but they start on college classes. Then what he does is he takes them out of country. Now this is for a select group of people, takes them out of country, and they go for a summer program at one of the top universities. Now that really is good for their parents, because parents say, well, Junior is not going to the traditional school. He's doing so well that he's going off to university and taking his university classes while he's in high school. But it's also good for the kids. They didn't know if they wanted college. They didn't know if this was something they were capable of. Every day in school was misery for them. So, he's helped a lot of kids go to school that way.
And you, Shane, what would you say to a student who's unsure?
I think at the end of the day, I think the saying that the world is your oyster still plays very relevant today. At the end of the day, there's so many possibilities for you. But first of all, you don't have to feel pressured to enter university immediately after you're finished with your secondary education. Even I took a half gap year, and I know people take more than that. Take that time and still discover yourself or find out what you want to do. And once you get to a stage, I think it's always good to remind people that, well, you're young. You know, you're 17, 18, 19 maybe. You're just fresh out of high school, and the world's a massive place, and you are still young, and you've got so much time before entering the workforce, before fully immersing yourself into the real world and everything that lies ahead. I think with that in mind, why not give a university degree a shot? It's an introduction to a big stage of your life that you're going to grow, whether it is the content you're actually learning, the career you're pursuing, or if not, like I mentioned, all those practical skills that you need to work with. You're dealing with new responsibilities, you're dealing with new challenges. Like you said, you're going to be learning how to push yourself beyond a capability that you knew you could. But why not introduce yourself to that first? You've got so much time, and there's no rush with it as well. And university isn't a thing where I'm in, I'm out, I'm done. You know, some people opt for, maybe I'll take a year break after my first year. And you can always take it at your pace, but you discover who you are and who you want to be while you're doing that. And I don't know, maybe you'll meet friends along the way. And maybe after you've met those friends, like I've met a lot of friends I've gone, you will sit here right now and you will be saying, well, what would happen to me? What would my life be if I hadn't gotten to uni and I hadn't met all those folk? Or what would my life be if I hadn't learned all those things? Or what would my life be if I didn't learn how to push myself or see what I can do or what I can't do? There's so many things that you're able to grasp, and learning in university is not just learning your education, it's learning life. So I'm not trying to market Help University right now, but why not?
Well, on that note, sorry, did you want to say something, Phil?
Let me just tell you, don't wait 13 years to finish your undergrad like I did. You know, I could have done it a little bit quicker. I'd be happier, right?
Sure.
I don't regret it, right? But I kind of wish I would have been able to get it done a little sooner.
Thank you. And I think on that note, it's been, I just want to say it's been such a privilege for me to be in the presence of both of you. I think I've learned so much just this hour or so, just listening to your perspectives, and you've brought so much experience, even you, I mean, Shane, I think your responses have been just mind-blowing to me personally, and I've really enjoyed learning from your perspectives, and I hope you too, ladies and gentlemen, enjoyed this experience. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us for this hour or so, and I hope that you will be with us for future episodes once again on Let's Talk, Why Not?
Thank you so much.